What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here, holding it down on a Friday in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review it. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live here Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, streaming on Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Xumo Play, DraftKingsNetwork.com, or right here, as always, on the DraftKings YouTube channel here. An interesting day in sports just got even weirder, Claudia. We have plenty to get into this morning. What's going on?
Yeah, busy one at the PGA Championship, which we will talk about. We're also going to talk about Caitlin Clark and the slow start she has had so far, 2 games into the WNBA. And 2 of us got to hang out with Big Papi earlier this week, and it wasn't me, but we do get to hear the interview today. Red Sox legend David Ortiz will join the show. And then the Knicks go for the knockout, previewing Game 6 between New York and Indy. But first, you mentioned it, GoJo, crazy morning out of Valhalla. I want to read this exact tweet from Jeff Darlington so we know the story. He tweeted this morning: breaking news, world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has been detained by police in handcuffs after a misunderstanding with traffic flow, which led to his attempt to drive past an officer at Valhalla. The police officer attempted to attach himself to Scheffler's car. Scheffler then stopped his vehicle at the entrance to Valhalla. The police officer then began to scream at Scheffler to get out of the car. When Scheffler exited the vehicle, the officer shoved Scheffler against the car and immediately placed him in handcuffs. He is now being detained in the back of the police car. Darlington then went on ESPN to talk a little bit more about it. He said the cop said to him, "There's nothing you can do. He's going to jail." We don't have an update yet, at least from multiple sources saying he's been released. This is just a crazy morning. Tea time supposed to be 8:35 Eastern. Senior, hearing about this, what's your first reaction?
My first reaction, first and foremost, is there was somebody who lost their life in this. So that's the headline. There was an accident there.
In a separate event, yeah.
Right. This was not the Scottie Scheffler's car. That's why traffic was backed up. So first and foremost, I mean, that's the main thing here. So certainly the thoughts to the family of that person. I mean, that's the by far not even close, not even in the same stratosphere as to what we're going to talk about from the sports side. So that needs to be first and foremost in everybody's mind. And then from the sports side, as Claudia mentioned, Jeff Darlington was about 10 to 15 feet away from Scottie Scheffler when this was going on. So basically, there was the traffic, and Scottie tried to go around it. Now, it turns out that Jeff Darlington was earlier trying to get through that, was stopped and said he's with the media, with ESPN. They let him go through. There was another golfer who was driving through, same thing, tried to get around it. The officer stopped the car, saw the markings on the car, that it was one of the courtesy vehicles, let that car go through, and basically Jeff Darlington was told that the media, especially ESPN, covering the event, and golfers were the only ones that were going to be let through. For whatever reason, well, this police officer either didn't see it on the car, or I don't know how the car was marked, but told Scottie Scheffler to stop. Scottie did not. Now you've aggravated a police officer. You've disobeyed his rule to stop. And the term Jeff keeps using is the officer then attached himself to Scottie Scheffler's car, to which Scheffler supposedly kept driving for another 10 yards or so and then stopped. The officer started banging his flashlight on the car, screaming at Scottie Scheffler. Scheffler rolled down the window. The cop ripped the door open and ripped Scottie Scheffler out of the car, shoved him against the car, and was handcuffing him. And Jeff was 10 to 15 feet away. Scottie actually looked at Jeff and said, "Can you help me?" And that's when the police officer said to Jeff, there's nothing you can do. He's going to jail. And a little later, another officer came up to Darlington with a pad, a pad and a pencil, and asked, "Who was that? Who was that person?" They didn't know it was Scottie Scheffler at the time. So there's still so much
I was
more.
gonna say, Dad,
to
we
get
actually
into
have
with
the
this.
video
We
of
will.
that moment, I think, if we want to share that here quickly. We've got the video that Jeff Darlington took for anyone watching on DraftKings Network of the encounter and Scottie Scheffler being taken away in handcuffs.
Guys.
Dude, step back. Back up, or
I'm
you
back.
I'm back.
Step
Step back.
I'm back.
You're game one, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Guys,
What do we tell you?
I'm staying back.
Here's the thing. Right now, he's going to jail.
Okay.
Okay? He's going to jail, and it ain't nothing you can do about it. Period. There's nothing you can do about it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, do you have
First,
a question?
I'm media. I'm a reporter. Okay.
Okay.
So that's all.
That's fine.
I just want to make sure that's
Okay,
known.
but you need to step
No
back
problem.
over here
No
now.
problem. You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's the encounter itself, Dad, that Jeff Darlington, who, man, let me tell you what, waking up to the Mad Lib headline of world number one,
Yeah.
Scottie Scheffler arrested. Here's Jeff Darlington footage. Not what I had on my bingo card here at 4 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles. But, Dad, this seems to be a situation that is gonna need a lot more explanation going forward here. We've got some detail, but still piecing a lot of that together right now. I think what you mentioned at the heart of this is there was the incident that preceded all this where unfortunately someone at the course lost their life near the entrance, and that's what created this entire traffic event near the entrance to Valhalla. And what you had was a bunch of people on edge as the result of that, and then everything else that poured out from this. You know, the will they, won't they, or should they, would they, of the protocol for getting the PGA golfers in and out of there in the way that they were trying to. And the response here from law enforcement is something I'm sure, based on the amount of people around there, we're going to get a lot more detail about soon. But at this point in time, it seems like now the questions still abound. We haven't heard whether or not definitively Scottie Scheffler has been released yet. We're not sure how it's going to affect the start time of the round today. I believe I just saw that PGA officials on Twitter said that basically the situation is ongoing right now. So they're trying to piece this together. And we have got one of the strangest starts to a major championship I can remember in my adult lifetime.
So I'm going to keep repeating if I do. I'm sorry that the main focus is the person that lost their life in this, and we are then going to talk about the sports side of it. And from the golf side of it, as Jeff Darlington was continuing to report, there were golfers that walked 1.5 miles because they saw the traffic jam and weren't going to try and deal with it because they didn't know if they could get in. They walked to carry their clothes and walked to the course. And as I said, other golfers were let in. So this was one of those where the officer that stopped Scottie either didn't recognize the car, and maybe if Scottie would have stopped right away and said, I'm a golfer, or maybe that would have changed, because supposedly that was what Jeff Darlington reported, that media and golfers were the only ones being let through. So maybe there was not even miscommunication. Sounds like there was no communication. And then as soon as you disobey a police officer, things are going to turn for you. You know, that's then on you. You know, you can't disobey that police officer there in that situation and just keep driving and not acknowledge that. At least that's my opinion. But we'll see. As far as the golf is concerned, so here are the numbers. They were supposed to tee off at 7:15 Eastern time, and Scheffler was supposed to tee off at 8:48. So now tee off time, because of this situation, tee-off time is 8:35 Eastern, which would put Scottie Scheffler teeing off at 10:08. So as an ongoing situation, you're right. Is he still at the precinct? Is he still being detained? If he doesn't make his tee time, you know that's it. He's going to be disqualified. I would imagine, again, from the sports side, that he is probably hoping for rain, right? Because there is going to be a lot of rain, and for it to be delayed even more, so from the side of the golf, that he can get to the course. That's what we're going to continue. Rarely do we get live sports during a morning show like this, but that's kind of what the next thing we're going to be waiting to hear is if and when he gets released, and will he make it in time for his tee time? And then will there be a weather delay? It's supposed to just start pouring there. It's already raining, but it's supposed to get really bad closer to 10 o'clock Eastern. So they may be holding off on that anyway. And I'll say again, main issue here is the loss of life in this accident. But now we are in this sports situation to go along with it. Something, again, as we all woke up this morning, certainly did not expect to see.
Yeah, it's going to end up being an entirely separate issue. And of course, the issue now is going to largely center in the discourse around the interaction between law enforcement and a person, which is, the thing that we spin round and round in a lot of different, avenues in life. And in this case, it involves one of the most famous golfers in the world, one of the golfers that is probably least recognizable given his level of fame here and all these different factors that are going to pour into it. I saw Peter Burns at ESPN said that he was on his way over to the course that morning when they stopped the vehicle that they were all in, and someone tried to, essentially paraphrasing, someone tried to run over one of the police officers. Like, that was, I think, the tension that was dripping down there in that moment between the sides of law enforcement and obviously Scottie Scheffler and his camp, who I'm sure thought, hey, we're just doing the same thing everybody else is doing right now. So I'm going to pause and take a beat, and we'll kind of wait and see what other information we get on this. I'm sure this is going to change a lot over the course of the 2 hours of the show that we've got going here now. But again, your Friday morning now starts with world number 1 ranked Scottie Scheffler arrested outside of Valhalla Country Club as he gets set to potentially try and win after a strong start on Thursday for the PGA Championship. We've got the mugshot of Scottie Scheffler now making its way out on the LMPD website. So lots to dive into there, Dad, in a situation that escalated quickly outside of this golf tournament.
We'll actually get into the golf a little later. Xander Schauffele is winning at 9 under, set a course record there. And you mentioned Scottie Scheffler is 4 under, so he's certainly right there. We'll talk about Tiger Woods. He's 1 over. But the golf on the course, certainly secondary at this point. We don't even know when the golf or if it's going to start today. They have a time, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, this is more information will come out, certainly. But I thought Jeff Darlington, who was right there, did a great job of kind of breaking down everything that happened at Valhalla.
Yes, so a lot more to get to there in Valhalla. Claudia, let's transition now and get back to the actual sporting events that went down last night. We had major NBA action here that was over early enough for a lot of people to get to bed because, boy howdy, if you wondered how the Timberwolves are going to react, the answer was with an absolute ass-whooping of incredible proportions.
Yeah, the spread on this game just too. So they started with a 20-0 run early in the first, then got up by as much as 50 points. So a 50-point lead, and then it ended in a 45-point win for the Timberwolves. Now they're 5-point underdogs heading into Denver on Sunday for Game 7, so the market is still favoring Denver. I know both of you said it's tough to sort of ignore what a championship team can do. This series is so tough for me. I'm very curious what you guys think on it at this point because they looked like the team, Minnesota, that they did in Game 1 and 2. That defense finally showed up. A 45-point blowout. None of these games have really been close, but 45 points in a pivotal game like this, GoJo, is not something I think any of us expected.
No. You could have told me that Minnesota regained form and got back in front of their home crowd for another time in this series and came back and won. And that Anthony Edwards coming out aggressively and attacking the way he did after a game where Denver on the other side had basically tried to make it anyone but him. And I would have believed that, but Dad, to watch Nikola Jokic standing for basically the entire fourth quarter on the bench, watching the points continue to pile up from the Minnesota side here, that was a thunder punch, the likes of which we rarely get to see on this stage. And we're no stranger to this, right? We had those Cavs and Warriors finals from years ago where no game would be within 15 points as it would oscillate from home to road. But even the Joker said himself after this game, you don't see losses like this very often, so all you can do is accept it, digest it, and try and keep it moving after this.
You remember, listen, if you play any sport long enough, and Mike, you and I have both been involved in them, you either are on you're either the windshield or the bug sometimes, right? And last night, Denver was the bug. And, so how do you react in it? In football, you go week to week. So we always ask the question, do you even watch a tape of that game? Or I remember the 1 year Rex Ryan, when he coached the Jets, had the whole burial of it, buried the tape so they weren't going to watch it when they got blown out. So what do you do? And Jokic is right. I mean, now you're in a series. You got a game 7 coming up Sunday. What are you going to learn from this? It would, certainly some X's and O's or maybe some technical things that you could possibly learn. Other than that, these teams know each other. It's been blowouts either way. I mean, I'm watching this game. It's 9-2. Next thing you know, it's a 20-0 run. And you're like, okay, it's the first quarter. We've seen big leads in the first quarter and teams come back. But they had at least a 17-point lead for the last 31 minutes of this game. The last time there was a blowout this big in the postseason, 2015, Chicago beat Milwaukee by 54 points in the first round. So this happens. You don't really expect it in the playoffs, so we see blowouts in the playoffs. I have no idea. I still think Denver overall, Mike, is the better team. I have no idea what to expect in Game 7, which will be back in Denver, and we'll see. Again, Jamal Murray only had 10 points in this game. They got smoked on the boards by almost 20, 62-43. Well, they were able to use the defense that they like, where Cat's the main line and Gobert does the floating a bit, kind of like that roving free safety. So I'm sure you expect that in Game 7. But then what comes into play there? Whistles and the refs, early fouls. Does that become a factor? So, I mean, early on, that's what I'm waiting to see, Mike, in Game 7. Early on, will something affect what's going to happen in the rest of this game, or can this just be a straight great game? We'd love to see that in a Game 7.
What a series it's been, where if we get Game 5 Denver and Game 6 Minnesota, the kind of action that we could get in this series, because you're right, it was multifold. And I think the biggest factors it came down to were, on one side, you had Minnesota's bigs absolutely up to the challenge defensively here. People had talked about, hey, making Karl Anthony Towns the primary defender. And even in one-on-one spots, Dad, where Karl didn't have the help coming from Rudy Gobert, I thought he did as good a job as you can do against the best player in basketball in Nikola Jokic. And then I thought on the other side, they really bottled up Jamal Murray, made life uncomfortable for him. It was the reason we'd seen Denver switch who brought the ball up the court so much, is because Jamal Murray, on a slightly injured calf, and been getting harassed. And then I thought, Dad, we talked about this with Boston the other night. Denver, I think, just tried to shoot through too much of their troubles for too long. Yeah. Both these teams that can get hot from beyond the arc. We've seen Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. certainly go off. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, all these guys. It just took them way too long to put their heads down consistently, Claudia, and go to the basket and try and make something happen. And by that point, it was already too late. And on the other side, you had a Timberwolves team that just couldn't miss.
Well, I was going to say, you have an embarrassment of riches when you have a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he's not the guy you put on the best player in the NBA. So I have to agree with you. It's so cliche when we say defense wins championships, but defense will win Game 6 and defense will win Game 7. And also when it comes to the bench points, the Nuggets bench outscored 36-9, and 7 of those were in the final 5 minutes. So I don't know. I've been saying this whole time, I think that Anthony Edwards is a different type of player. I really do. He seems wise beyond his years. 22 years old, the way he plays and the way he talks about his team and the leadership he has. I truly, truly believe that Minnesota could get through this and win it all this year. I do.
I think some of the late stats I kind of throw out, because when the game gets away from you, the stats just keep going and keep kind of multiplying against you. I agree with what you said, Mike. You look at 2 possessions in the first quarter trying to stay in this. Denver got 5 offensive rebounds. They ended up with 10 for the game. They got them there for second shots. But after that, like you said, they just tried to hoist up threes. I mean, through it all. And when you're missing threes, rarely you getting the rebound at all. And they just kept missing, and the game just kept getting further and further away from them.
It's incredible. Coming up next, I'll give you a stat to tell you just how historically bad a loss of this nature is on this stage, and an historically great quote from Anthony Edwards to illustrate exactly what Claudia just talked about. Leadership and confidence well beyond his years. So, the Minnesota Timberwolves forced Game 7 in the NBA. We'll get to Caitlin Clark. Night 2, spoiler alert, didn't look a lot better than Night 1. We'll explain exactly why this is the case coming out the gate and why it is incredibly understandable for one of the biggest stars in women's college basketball to have a little bit of a struggle here to the start of her WNBA career. But, Dad, for young stars, Anthony Edwards is the first name out of everybody's mouth right now. And Claudia brought it up in the last segment, but I do want to underscore that every soundbite I have heard this postseason that involves Anthony Edwards is just reeking of and leaking out incredible leadership and incredible emotional intelligence from a player who's just 22 years old, a guy that seems to understand, and you hear it from his teammates, how to empower his supporting cast, how to very naturally, and it seems almost effortlessly, make guys feel like they can go out there and do not only their job, but do even beyond that. Feel like they're valuable contributors on a team that they know is led by one guy, and that one guy is Anthony Edwards, and he has the kind of confidence that is very easy to get behind. This was Anthony Edwards at the podium last night after the game, confirming the rumors that people had heard that he had told an opposing ball boy at the Denver Nuggets arena, "We'll be back and see you in Game 7.
Did you really tell the locker room staffer in Denver you were going to be back for
Hell
Game 7?
yeah. They know. I was in there. Yeah, I told them. I said, I'll see y'all for Game 7. Yeah.
Dad, he's the coolest player in the NBA right now. He's I've said it before. He's like a movie basketball player. He's like a folk hero. We're starting to see things, and this is what we talked about this year in the first postseason since 2005, where we have had a second round that didn't feature LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, where we had a vacuum that needed to be filled. There has not been maybe but one moment during this round where I've thought about that absence. The NBA is in great hands right now, and Anthony Edwards, I think, has got to be near the top of the list of guys who have helped fill that void, not only with great play, because we've seen great play from a bunch of guys and quite a few teams in this round, but with the kind of magnetic personality and superstar traits that we needed to see from this next generation of players that are getting ready to step up and become those guys as we sunset some of the greatest players that we've ever seen.
Oh, to be 22 and that great and have that kind of personality, right? I mean,
sick.
that's the truth. They're the years you feel you're invincible, right? You sit in a pro locker room and you just feel nothing. I can do anything that I want. You almost feel like you can say anything you want. You're brimming with confidence. And then, oh, by the way, he can go back it all up. You know, we weren't players that could do something like that. There are the top 1%ers that can. Some try who aren't that good and at times make fools of themselves. This guy can get away with it, and he's 22. The biggest thing to me, Mike, is there's the brashness and the confidence, and I get it. Again, that's youth. Let's see when he's 29, 30 if he still talks like that. Whether he does or not, who knows? But right now, that's where he is. I love what we talked about. I love his leadership. For 22 years old, remember, this guy was a former number 1 overall pick. And he's been in the league 4 years. The last 2, he's really started coming on the scene, made the last couple of NBA All-Star teams. But I'm a big fan of his leadership and how players are buying into what he is saying at just 22 years old. Now, we say he's so young, but at 22, it's his 4th year in the league, though. That's the amazing thing. These guys can be young, but already have multiple years in the league.
I'd be fascinated to hear him talk about how this leadership style developed, because he's 22. He didn't learn this out of a book. This isn't something that he's been spending years studying, I'm sure. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's natural, because I heard the guys on Jenkins and Jones talking. The endearing thing about Anthony Edwards is it all seems to be incredibly genuine. And to have the kind of ability where we've seen him with Karl Anthony Towns at the podium, trying to put the mom arm out and protect him when questions come up, attacking the way that he's gone through the game, giving him some barbs in public, but knowing and understanding it seems to come from this place of love that lifts Cat up rather than tears him down the way so many on the outside do. You heard his other teammates last night saying Anthony Anthony Edwards empowers me and makes me believe that I can go out here and get this done. Like, it's coming from so many different sources throughout the entirety of this playoff run that you're absolutely right, Dad. It's the perfect thing because in sports, everyone can smell a fake. Everyone can smell someone who's trying to put on front or do something. That's why there's been so much conflicting, I think, thought process around someone like, let's say, Russell Wilson's leadership in the NFL, where people have never been quite sure what's genuine and what's not. There's no lie. There's no front with Anthony Edwards that we've seen so far. And again, we're only seeing a little bit from the outside, but man, it is a lot of good stuff, Claudia, to take in.
I can't think of another player that is most likely universally liked as Anthony Edwards is. Everybody sort of has a problem with all the big stars, but he's just so damn likable. I do want to bring in the odds here because, like I mentioned, I do strongly believe if they can get past Denver, they could win this all. 9-1 right now, you can get them at. This will be the longest price if they do get through this series. Know that for sure. So at 9-1, now's the time to jump on it. Just a quick update on these futures prices. Celtics still the favorite, -130. The Nuggets are second at +330. So again, those odds will shift. The Mavs at +750 and the T-Wolves at 9-1. Are you guys with me or am I buying too much? Is this recency bias rubbing off on me, Senior?
Well, I mean, listen, we've seen how this series has gone. There's been some blowouts after blowouts, but that's worth throwing a few bucks on, isn't it? 9-1. I mean, why not? I mean, it's not like we can sit here and say, oh, that's never going to happen. It certainly can happen. I mean, we still think Denver, I don't know if you think, Mike, we still think it could be Denver and Boston, but if it were to be Minnesota or Oklahoma City, it's not like we would sit here and come on the show and go, oh my God, this is or Dallas, the most shocking thing that's ever happened in the NBA. It wouldn't be there. So why not? Why not try and grab the biggest odds and you can make a few bucks?
You can all give that a try. Remember yesterday we had the conversation. I was going in and I was putting my take in the time capsule like we did for the draft. And I said, Denver's the best basketball team in the NBA. Denver is going to win this series. And so I am now revisiting, you can call it a wine box or whatever, and I'm pulling out the take and I'm reminding myself that one off night does not a series make. And so now this shifts back home. Denver is going to be the team with the home crowd on their side. And I think you're not going to get that version of Nikola Jokic that shows up again. I don't think you're going to get that version of Jamal Murray that shows up again here. We've seen them adjust and counterpunch. It's going to have to happen again, but I still ultimately ride with that team until further notice.
I just feel like Jamal Murray has been relatively ineffective, though. He's had one game with 20-plus points in this series, 10, 16, 19, 24, 8, 17, but he hasn't been a massive threat. And I think the Timberwolves, every time they are winning these games by wide margins, it's just by locking down on the Joker. Sure, Jamal Murray, go ahead. Like, you defend the one big threat, and I do think they can get through, Senior.
Mike, I do agree. I still think it's going to be Denver. But with those odds, that's why we always say, bet responsibly, right?
Yes.
To me, it's still worth throwing a little bit on there just to see what the return you can have. But at the end, I do think that Denver is going to end up winning.
Yeah, I guess that's, to me, what it ultimately comes down to is we see, and I mean, that was the message to the Minnesota Timberwolves going into this game was it doesn't matter what happened in the last game. It doesn't matter the margins that you see here. Each game in the postseason, and this was echoed by both coaching staffs, whether it was Finch in Minnesota or Mike Malone on the Denver side, is this doesn't transfer over game to game. And while there are certain things you're going to take from it, and you heard them in the broadcast talking about last night, I mean, Dad, as someone that took a banner ass whooping on a big stage and got bodied enough to where you got to process the loss in about the third quarter, hearing Nikola Jokic talk in the post-game press conference, that felt familiar. That was a guy that got comfortable with all the uncomfortable feelings while he was standing up the entire fourth quarter, watching that all take place, and said after, like, hey, it's a great loss because they went out there and put out a banner performance, and all we can do is sit there and take our medicine. You know, there's some things that you can excuse away when you win in a game. There's no excusing anything away when you lose by 50 in the postseason, and so they've got to go there and have some hard conversations. And the best part about sports is the love language is conflict, and conflict allows you to resolve problems and disputes a lot quicker when you trust everyone involved.
The biggest bummer for you, at least certainly for Jokic, is he gets another game to make up for it. You didn't, and that was the end of your college career. you have to live with that one forever.
I said he pulled the preemptive move. We see Stephon Diggs and all those guys go out and watch the confetti fall, and they internalize all this stuff for next year's motivation. Joker gets to use that in Game 7. We should all be terrified of what's about to happen with this man.
Here on GoJo and Golic to talk about the first 2 games for Caitlin Clark. The first one started off slow against the Connecticut Sun, ended up with 20 points, no rebounds, 3 assists, but it did bring in 2.1 million viewers, the most watched game in the WNBA in 23 years. Game 2 was last night, and it was even worse. Just 9.7 rebounds, 6 assists against the Liberty. First time since January 2021, guys, when she was a freshman at Iowa, that she was held to single digits. Here's what Indiana Fever's head coach Christy Sides had to say.
I mean, it's a process, and she's going to be fine. She's figuring it out. She just needs to get a little bit of confidence right now. I think she's, taking some shots that she normally would knock down. But Naja Laney is one of the best defenders in the league. And she's just making it, they're making it really hard on her. We've got to do a better job of finding ways to get her some easier, more open looks.
Diana Taurasi obviously sipping her tea. GoJo, how much should people be overreacting just 2 games into the W for Caitlin Clark?
I would say not at all. And I thought Caitlin was very, pragmatic in her response to this and saying, hey, I understand this is a jump physically for me in there. She referenced that single digit thing and said, but here, these are bigger, faster, stronger, better players overall. And I'm getting pushed off screens in a way I used to not. Physicality is certainly had a huge uptick for her dead. And oh, by the way, She started off her career playing against the third and now second best teams in terms of record from last season in the WNBA, and gets to follow that up by playing those same two teams in the next couple of games here now. You saw on the other side, the New York Liberty, they're one of the super teams that we talk about in this league. It's them and the Aces that have formed these Death Star rosters of not only incredible players like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, but also just the size that Stewie and Jonquel Jones and all these players pose to someone in Caitlin Clark, who's on a team who's had the number one pick in back-to-back years.
Yeah, listen, am I freaking out just yet? Absolutely not. 2 games in. Is the league maybe starting to go, 36 of these games are on national TV? And remember, this is a bad team. This is a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2015. And last year they got Leah Boston. This year, Caitlin Clark. And right now, it's not making much of a difference. And I think 2 things we didn't expect, 2 records for the team, for her and the team she is on in the first 2 games. The first game, she had 10 turnovers, the most by any in their debut, and the Fever lost by a total of 57 points in their first 2 games. That is unfortunately a record of most difference in points in the first 2 games of the season. So not starting it this way, but Mike, I'm with you. She's going to learn what she needs to get better at, and how the team needs to work better. 10 turnovers the first game, 3 turnovers the second game, 15 shots the first game for her, just 8 shots, 7 of them threes in the second game. So they just have to figure it out more, right? I think they will. I don't expect them to turn this around in year 1 and all of a sudden be a playoff team, but they're building, and I would imagine there are those, without question, Mike, that expected an immediate big-time turnaround, getting basically the GOAT of college basketball on your team. But that's just not how it works. It's a very few people in any sport that walk in from college to the pro level and continue to dominate. It's happened. It's not happening here, and it's not just on her. It's the team as well. It's not a very good team at this point. But it's something the WNBA, and rightfully so, I get it, they have put a lot on for this team to be one of the showcase teams this year, even though they were bad, because they have Caitlin Clark and unfortunately not starting out well.
No, but I think it can still work out really well for the W. Now, I don't know what the numbers of the game last night are going to look like, because that was on Prime Video. I believe that's where I had to go and watch it at least. But so I don't know how that's going to register the same. Claudia mentioned over 2 million people watching that first one there, and you had a sold-out arena for the home debut for her in the state of Indiana. And, Dad, I think what you saw yesterday was kind of some of the effect. I know Pat McAfee took a little bit of heat from some people because they watched this game. They're in a show based in Indiana. Obviously, Pat has a ton of love for everything that goes on in that state. And they were watching and kind of marveling at the Sun and remarking like, oh, there's some really good teams in this league that they were open about. Outside of Darius Butler, hadn't really paid much attention to. And there were some people that thought, oh, that wasn't professional. And there were some people thought, oh, it's kind of endearing that someone was that honest. And I tend to side a little bit more with the latter, where I say, hey, there are going to be people like Pat that are coming to the W for the first time, maybe because of Caitlin Clark. And what you've gotten through the first 2 games is you got to see 2 of the best teams in the league. You got to see Alyssa Thomas, who is one of the best triple-double artists in the WNBA's history. You got to see Breanna Stewart, former MVP and number 1 overall pick. Sabrina Ionescu, who was doing similar things that Caitlin Clark did in college when she was at Oregon in terms of 3-point proficiency. She was a triple-double monster there, and who's also been a part of this great team in New York. And so for people that might be parachuting in now, and I think there's always going to be different camps and different buckets of people who come to this in a different way, I do think for the W, who's going to continue to have Caitlin Clark on TV and who's going to get better as she goes along, as will this team through the course of this season. But it is a great chance for other people to parachute in and finally maybe get some first-time exposure to some really incredible players that people are seeing.
People are parachuting in, Mike. You can tell by the ratings. They've been higher than they've been. Attendance. People are parachuting in. And so there now names that we know because we've been doing this for a while. It's not like Caitlin Clark's the first superstar from college to come into the WNBA. You mentioned them. You go all the way back to the Rebecca Lobos of the world. There were huge stars in college, mostly, quite honestly, out of UConn, that we all knew about that went to the WNBA. And, it just hadn't, it was growing incrementally. And Caitlin Clark, And certainly Angel Reese, you throw some of the other names in there. There were a lot of names we were following. It's just been over time. I think people have gotten more and more into it because there have been big time superstars in this league for a while now. So I completely agree. There are tons of people parachuting in that will get to know, oh, this person or that person. Oh, wow, they were that good in college and look what they're doing now in the WNBA. So it's a sport on the women's side that's been on the rise, and we'll see. So maybe for that casual fan that parachuted in, it is giving them a chance to see these other stars, Claudia, in the league and go, wow, this is a league that is full of some superstars that were superstars in college as well.
You mentioned Angel Reese, and she was so dominant on the boards in college. That was her thing, right? She could, 15 rebounds a game was what she averaged. It was easy for her. 8 and 5, just 2 games to look at now, 9 in the other. But that's just what it is. And that's what Diana Taurasi and some of these veterans were referring to. And we all got into an uproar because it just was something that nobody else was saying. But she was right. I mean, these women are bigger. They are stronger. They are... you're an adult in college, but you're more of an adult out of college, and that's just what it is. It's professional basketball. So I think I said this after we heard that clip from Taurasi too. She's right. She's saying the quiet part out loud. I don't know if she said it the right way, so it seems sort of demeaning to Caitlin Clark, but I'm not necessarily surprised as I watch both her and Angel Reese in these debuts in these first few games. It's what it is, especially when the expectations are so high. If you don't meet those, everybody's going to think you're that much worse. It's like, it seems so blown out of proportion just because they were such standouts in college, but it's professional basketball, so I'm not surprised at all.
Well, and again, I'll underscore what we talked about yesterday. Their season finished up like a month ago.
Right.
That's an insane level of turnaround. And I get basketball players play more year-round. Sport and football, it's such a violent car crash every day that you need the few months in the offseason to try and actually get everyone's bodies back in a place where they can do that again. But it's still a huge load that now you have to turn around. And then you're right, upgrade the level of competition. Old friend of mine, Devereaux Peters, who was a great women's basketball player at Notre Dame, 2-time WNBA champion when she played professionally. And I remember during this conversation, she did a thread about making that jump. And she said, you do not realize what strength is until you have gone against someone who has had children and is now giving you buckets out there on the block. That mom strength is a different level when you make that jump to the W. And that same thing, Dad, we talk about it all the time. I remember showing up to training camp in the NFL the first time around when I'm getting going, and I see 30-something-year-old Brett Kiesel with all his kids rolling around in the grass outside there, and you quickly realize this is grown folk business, and you're going to have to handle yourself a little bit differently. Speaking of handling business, coming up next, one of the best to ever do it, David Ortiz, stopped by and talked to us here about his prolific career and some of the great intersport debate we've heard from the last couple weeks. Next. someone here very excited to welcome in Hall of Famer, World Series champion, all-around Red Sox legend, David Ortiz, kind enough to join us here on the show. And Big Papi, you are out back in Boston at our headquarters at DraftKings. I have to imagine that feels nice. I saw you were in upstate New York at the New York State Senate getting honored. So getting away from all those Yankees fans and back to the loving arms of Boston has to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I feel more safe down here. No, but really, yesterday.
What was it like being around all those Yankees fans, having them have to say nice things? I know you were honored in the Senate there for obviously your career, all your great philanthropic work, but it had to be kind of nice to see all those Yankees fans have to say nice stuff about you for a little while.
I tell you what, man, it was pretty cool. It was an honor, to be out there. All of them, they made me feel like I was at home. They were very honest with me, hey, you did your thing, but we respect you, we love you, and it was pretty cool, man. I feel very thankful, when people recognize how hard you have worked and what it takes to put good things together, and nothing, just excited to continue, working with my foundation and continue doing good things.
Well, hell of a path you're on, both sports-wise, inside and outside that world. My son and I were football players, and over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk. Some NBA players were talking and NFL players about, could NBA players play in the NFL? Could NFL players play in the NBA? Growing up in the Dominican Republic, obviously you played baseball, but you're also a basketball standout. So going way back to those teen years, did you ever think maybe it would be a different sport that you would be able to follow?
I think, yeah, man. I mean, sport in general, there's always some sacrifices that you got to do to be able to accomplish, especially when you're trying to make the professional jump, because when you play a sport in the amateur level, you try to be good, but the professional type of level is a different thing. So in my case, a lot of people tell me, hey, you could have played football because you a big boy, this and that, but every sport have its specialties, and it doesn't matter what people say that you can. You had to grow up. You got to born for that. You got to grow up with it. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you wake up one day and you can play and you feel like you want to play any sport and you're going to be successful at, Every sport has their specialty, and I leave it up to that.
So what you're saying is none of those football and basketball players would be able to hit a curveball, right?
Oh, hell no. No chance.
I was going to say, for all the talk about how jump shooting is a specialty and all that, there is nothing more difficult, I think, in sports than having to get up to the plate and try and hit one out of the park. That's for sure.
I had that conversation the other day because something went viral the other day about some tennis player talking about or saying that tennis was the most difficult sport out of all. And I didn't agree. I know that tennis is not an easy thing to do. Basketball, football, soccer, you name it. But the one thing that I can tell you for sure is that no one other athlete is going to be able to hit an 100 miles an hour fastball at all. I put my money down all the way in. It doesn't matter if you are the best athlete on earth.
I could not agree more. Listen, for a guy that played 9 years in the NFL, I have no problem admitting hitting a baseball is way harder from a technical standpoint than what I had to do on the football field, and I sure as hell couldn't do it. How many times I'd be falling back on my ass when the ball's coming by me before it curves over the plate.
I used to bring some really tough guys into the baseball field to hit batting practice, and 10 minutes later, they would tell me, Papi, I don't want no part of this. I'm telling you, baseball is a tough sport. Like the hands and eye coordination goes beyond anything for you to accomplish that.
Without question. And it's something, obviously, you've been doing all your life. You signed with what was it, Seattle, just after your 17th birthday. So you've been doing this all your life, seeing the game grow as you have. You were done with the game in 2016. I'm wondering, because in all other sports we see changes, we know of the technical changes in baseball with the pitch clock and all that, but how much of a difference do you see in the game, if any at all, from when you got out to how the game is played now?
I tell you what, I wasn't all in with all the changes at the beginning. I was still playing when all this began. But now, when you look back and just think about a 4-hour game compared to a 2.5 or 2-hour game, it's a big difference. And I think those changes had apply in a good type of way into the game, you know. And now that I work on TV and I sit down to watch the game and this and that, it's not, how can I explain that to you? Like, I have issues with the way, you know, the players are developing nowadays, but I don't have issues with the clock. You know, I mean, the clock is doing wonderful, because sometimes I sit down to watch a 2-hour game, and because of the result and what I'm seeing, sometimes I get bored. Think about watching it for 4 hours. It's got to be, you know, in a whole different dimension. But I think the changes are going in a good direction when it comes down to the timing.
What is your issue with the way players are developing right now that you mentioned?
Everybody's hitting 150. What's going on? You know, like, when you sit down and watch everybody 150, 200, 150, 200, you be like, okay, the pitcher throwing invisible ball, what had changed? You know what I'm saying? What had changed? I mean, you had the thing, very few guys, even the good players are struggling nowadays. And I keep on asking, what is going on? I mean, they brought this thing into the game about, you know, swinging under the ball and this and that a couple of years ago. And I say, this is going to change some things when it comes down to run producing. And they call me dinosaur, they call me this, they call me that, but the guy that call you dinosaur, they never play the game. So they only have a clue about the numbers, not about the result. So we'll see how long that goes. But I think what makes the game fun is the diversity, you know, when you have guys at this level doing what people expect them to do. But when you have everybody struggling, you know, it's questionable.
Papi, we know your time is precious, and we got to let you go here in a second, but in the last minute or so we've got you. You mentioned people close to it. Red Sox right now just over 500, middle of the pack in the AL East. How do you feel about the current direction of the franchise that you've called home and loved for so long?
We got this town used to the winning thing, you know, but every organization go through a process where you have to use your farm like everybody else. Sometimes people focus on how much money you can pay out there. Sometimes teams are in a situation where they are not allowed to extend their payroll for any type of situation. They sometimes have to still pay to some of the players. Sometimes they trade players and they still have to take care of their salary, this and that. You know, there's a lot going on when it comes down to it. The Red Sox right now are trying to involve the farm more than anything else, because we have really good talent in the farm. And those guys need 2-3 years to develop, need 2-3 years to learn the process, need 2-3 years to get comfortable. You know what I'm saying? The Houston Astros went through it. They have become to be a dynasty. What else? I mean, there's a lot of organization preparing for that. Look at the Baltimore Orioles right now. I mean, everybody's from the farm, you know, when you look at the Baltimore Orioles. So organization are diving into it more likely, at the exception of the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers have so much money, they can do whatever they want as of right now, but not everybody's in the same category. So I will say this. I will say the Red Sox, it's going to take us a few years, you know, to jump in that wagon, but at some point I think we're quietly going to be there.
Well, hopefully, like you said, you can get back to the winning ways that you guys got everyone in Boston so accustomed to for so long. Big Papi, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your time back in Boston.
See you when I see you.
All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Hour number 2 kicking off here. Still plenty to get to from the world of sports last night, and certainly our thanks to David Ortiz, Big Papi, for stopping by and chatting with us for a little bit in hour number 1. If you missed any of that, obviously it'll be up in the podcast later. Awesome getting to talk with him, but just wanted to reset for everybody the top story from this morning in the world of sports. World number 1 golfer Scottie Scheffler was arrested by Louisville Metro Police this morning after trying to drive into the entrance of Valhalla Golf Club, the site of the PGA Championship this week, after traffic had been stopped outside of the course. Unfortunately, a man had been struck and killed by a shuttle bus around 5 a.m. this morning outside of Valhalla in a completely separate incident, but one that caused the traffic backed up that led to PGA players and media being the only ones let around here. Scottie Scheffler had approached, according to ESPN's Jeff Darlington, who was on the scene and had video of the arrest. Scottie Scheffler approaching in a marked PGA vehicle, trying to go around the way that others had, led to an incident with an officer that ended with Scottie Scheffler arrested. And Dad, according to local TV there, charges of second-degree assault of a police officer, third-degree criminal mischief, reckless driving, disregarding of traffic signals from an officer directing traffic, although we have gotten the updates now on the ESPN Plus broadcast of the match that Scottie Scheffler, who was set to tee off at a little after 10 o'clock Eastern this morning, was released and on his way after being booked at there. I had to take the mugshot and everything else, but according to SportsCenter's Randy Scott, he has been released and is expected to arrive at the PGA Championship around 9 o'clock Eastern for his 10:08 tee time here. So an absolute whirlwind morning for a guy who, oh, by the way, Dad, is in contention. Like that's the other part of this is Scottie Scheffler, as a bunch of people were trying to balance, not only would he make it there in general, but would he be disqualified if he missed his tee time for this? All these things hanging in the balance for a guy that's the world number 1 player in contention for one of the major championships going into the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, Xander Schauffele sets a course record, and he's 9 under. He leads, and Scottie Scheffler is 4 under. A bunch of players in that area there, so he is right in it. And listen, you're right. Completely separate from what's happened with Scottie, the reason this happened is someone did get killed, and that's obviously the main story. But from the sports side of it, as we have been talking about, it's just going to come down to what. And we'll find out more, but Jeff Darlington was literally right there when this went on. And as Mike said, and as we had said earlier, there were other, I think at that point, there may have only been one other golfer that had gotten through because he was a golfer. They were letting media. Jeff Darlington got let through because he was in the media, so they were all passing on the left-hand side of this traffic jam to get into the golf course. And for whatever reason now, from what we are gathering from Jeff, is a police officer asked Scottie to try to stop Scottie Scheffler's car. And Scottie didn't stop, again, by this report. And then as Jeff Darlington used the words, the police officer attached himself to Scottie Scheffler's car. And this is from Jeff, said Scottie drove for another 10 to 15 yards like that, which... we'll again, you want to hear both sides of it, but that is not the way I believe you handle yourself if that, in fact, is true. It seems like if you'd have stopped when he said stop and then say you're a golfer, you would get let in. Now, again, we'll see if there's more to this, but at that point now, you're at the point where if you have really given a police officer a ride on your car that's trying to stop you and you kept going, now this officer was mad. Scottie tried to finally stop, tried to roll down the window. The cop opened the door, pulled Scottie out, cuffed him. Jeff Darlington was right there. And Scottie Scheffler even looked at Jeff Darlington and said, "Can you help me?" And to which an officer tried to back up Jeff Darlington. And Jeff said he was with the media, but he was right there. And the cop said, "Nothing you can do. He's going to jail," which he did. And as Mike just said, subsequently has been released. Mike, I don't know, again, from the sports side, I don't know if it even started yet at Valhalla, if they teed off. They were supposed to tee off at 8:35 this morning Eastern time, and then as you said, Scottie at 10:08. I don't know if it started because it's been raining there, so I'm not sure if it's been started or if it's going to be backed up. But either way, it still seems like even if it started at 8:35 and his tee time was 10:08, that he's going to make it. But what a whirlwind morning! Again, headline: unfortunately, someone lost their life. But then from the sports side of it, as we're talking about. Very interesting situation for a guy in Scottie Scheffler who just had their first baby. Oh, by the way, again, from the sports side, his caddy will not be there tomorrow. I believe it was just yesterday and today. Tomorrow's leaving for his kid's graduation, I believe. So this is it's going to be real interesting. And will Scottie Scheffler get up in front of the media after his round, before his round, talk about it? I mean, is he going to do that, or is he going to just say, listen, I things may be pending still. Obviously, he was released on his own recognizance. I mean, they obviously know he's not a flight risk. They know exactly where he's going to be at the golf course. So I don't know how this obviously is going to go on later today.
Dad, I guess the interesting part for me is you're right. I will be curious from now on how this is handled, because the fact that with all those charges that were were reported that he was charged with after this, for him to already be back on his way to the course does seem like somebody somewhere started to realize, hey, this is not a headline that we want any more than we've already gotten. So what they're going to do from here on out for a situation that has escalated so far beyond what we used to see, and seems we'll see how necessary that winds up being, because Dad, we've been around a lot of these marquee events, and the one thing that you usually see is security is very aware of the people that they're trying to usher in and out of these situations, very aware, especially at events like this, of taking care of the golfers, the athletes, the people involved that need to get where they're going. These are incredibly, for the most part, well-coordinated outfits and people trying to do this. Obviously, this is complicated by the situation that you mentioned where there was a loss of life outside of the course, and you're not dealing with just course security anymore. Now there's police officers. Was there a discrepancy of Scottie Scheffler believing that the police officers were course security, where, you kind of know and have seen these guys on the way into the course as you're out there getting ready for the week. And so all of these things that now lead to this moment that I'm sure no one there locally in leadership in Louisville, or especially around Valhalla, I mean, this is a nightmare scenario in terms of the PR coming out of an event that I'm sure you've been thrilled to host for quite some time now.
Yeah. And supposedly when Scottie Scheffler, or again, not supposedly, this was reported by Jeff Darlington, was cuffed in the back of the car, the police car. He tried to get the attention of the officers that put him there and said to him, I didn't know you were a police officer. I think he was wearing one of those yellow vests, so he thought maybe he wasn't a police officer, just security there trying to direct traffic. But the police officer, according to Jeff Darlington, was having none of it. It was pretty hot at the time. And as I said, if Scheffler did give him a little bit of a ride on the car, which we'll wait and see if that really happened, you could understand it from that side. It seemed like, Mike, and I don't know, maybe it was they didn't know, because an officer did come up to Jeff Darlington with a pad and a pen and asked, who was that? So they didn't. That person didn't know, or you would have thought that it would have passed around at that point by the officers that it's Scottie Scheffler, but the officers are asking Jeff Darlington, who was that? So, I mean, they obviously, or at least at some point, did not know who it was.
Yeah, and we've seen reports elsewhere that it was in a marked PGA vehicle, like one of the courtesy vehicles that you see around there. And so, yeah, you'd have to imagine if this officer knew it was Scottie Scheffler, things probably aren't going down this way, and the situation probably gets de-escalated a lot sooner. And so now dealing with the fallout of that, you're right. If and when Scottie is supposed to speak, if and when we hear from someone from local law enforcement from there in Louisville as well, the next person to step to a microphone is going to have a lot of questions to answer, and we'll see what they have to produce there. So again, we'll keep you updated on that. But as of this time right now, it sounds like Scottie Scheffler is en route, going to make his tee time, and is going to actually play golf this weekend. And Dad just mentioned the circumstances under which he is doing it right now. New father, going to have a replacement caddy for the rest of the weekend, and just got a whiff of jail food here. If Scottie Scheffler manages to win this tournament here, that is truly going to be one for the record books. So we'll keep everyone updated on that situation as it keeps going along. But Claudia, we got to get to an ice cold situation from last night. You have had a lot of pent up takes that we'll get to with your Boston Bruins here, but we had some icy action in another very hockey loving city last night.
If the Bruins get a win like the Rangers had last night, I might have a heart attack, which leads us to the iciest shot of the night presented by Jägermeister, best served at 0 degrees. Damn, that's cold. For this installment of the iciest shot of the night, we have to go to Game 6. Like I mentioned, Rangers-Hurricanes. Canes were up 3-1 at home going into the third on their way to forcing a Game 7. And then Rangers, Chris Kreider happened. Yes, a natural hat trick, 3 in a row in just 9 minutes. Empty netter in the final minute to make it a final of 5-3. But what Chris Kreider did was, yes, historical. Only 2 other players in NHL history to have a natural hat trick in the third period. That included a series-clinching goal. And, of course, this was on the road, but folks were at MSG, and they were going crazy.
Fox centers across, shot by Zibanejad, deflected away. Played off the boards, off the glass by Roslovic. Rangers dominant here. Wrapper, they score! They score! The Rangers lead it 4-3.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Chris Kreider with a hat trick in the third period,
and Kreider outpositions Orlov.
Hockey,
an incredible call there, I believe,
so
on the MSG network there. And the energy inside of MSG, you could see the watch party there. People are throwing hats onto the ice at an arena tons of miles away from where the game's actually being played, Dad. My favorite stat about this natural hat trick from Chris Kreider is the fact that the shots, the total distance from shots to net for all of these was about 18 feet. My man was dunking it home with an absolute enthusiasm unknown to mankind. It was incredible.
But by the way, I love the watch parties. I love it when you go and they fill those arenas for what? Because listen, it's such a communal event, especially a home game when you have the crowd there, the home court, home ice, home field, whatever advantage. But obviously, when you're on the road, I still love when they fill that stadium just to watch. It's what a great experience to share with people you don't know, about your jersey that is pulling off a win like that. What a cool moment, and what an incredible night for Kreider.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, the fact that you look, the first goal from Kreider came with 6:43 left in the third period. The third one came in 4:19, less than 3 minutes of game time off the clock.
Wow.
And this man completely changed the course of the game, shut the door on the series, and now the Rangers get to move on here. Claudia, I don't want to brush away from this. I want to give you a chance because much like the David Ortiz interview that you weren't here for on your day off here, you also weren't here to get a chance to gloat about your Boston Bruins, who managed to extend the series here. So congratulations. I know it's been a little bit of an interesting series for you guys, but continue to live to fight another day.
Interesting series, yes. Great win, too, without captain Brad Marchand, which I'll get to sound from him in a second, talking about that Bennett hit that sat him out the last 2 games. This Bruins team does have the talent. I've been saying that. They have the goalie tandem, I think, to go up against any team in the league. They just have to put shots on net. And when they do, they're often pretty efficient in doing so. But in those games where they got blown out, they were ugly losses. They just didn't seem to be trying. They played very sloppy. So heading into Game 6 tonight, I don't feel too terrible about it. If they can play that way, if Marchand, which he may possibly, Jim Montgomery said, he still has to check off a few boxes, but he's hopeful he can return, they could win this game. I'll get to the odds in a second, but I want to get to the sound first. Like I mentioned, Marchand was out the last 2 games. I hit Sam Bennett in Game 3, but when asked about it, this is great. He basically said, this is just hockey. It's what we do.
I think that it was, he plays hard. He's an extremely physical player, great player for the group. I think he got away with a shot, but, I'm not going to complain. It happens, and, that's part of, especially playoff hockey. I've been on the other side of a lot of plays, and I think you get away with one, but that's part of the game, and definitely part of playoff hockey. It sucks to be on the other side of it, but that stuff happens. So I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. That's part of the game.
And he's right. This specifically has been a very gritty series, and that's why puck management has been so important because of the forechecks. If it's lopsided, then that ends up being the team that wins. The odds I want to bring in quickly because I did hop on the Bruins in that last game at plus money. They're giving it to me again, a little bit shorter here at plus 124. But this could be a series. Like I said, if they can stay physical, if Marchand comes back, that's huge. And I will have a heart attack if we end up getting a natural hat trick in the third period.
And it looks like he may be back in practice. He was running with the front line and stuff, so it looks like he might be back Game 6 tonight. And that it's interesting what he said there too, Mike, is listen, as he said, I've been on the other side of this, meaning he's laid out these hits, and that's just the way it is. Man, I'll never forget my dad, who coached me in football growing up, basically said, you hit somebody as hard as you can because they're trying to do it to you. This is in a contact sport. And he said, if they get up, great. If they don't, as long as it was a clean hit, that's the way it goes. And that's the mentality I grew up with. I tried to tackle somebody by putting them into the ground, by knocking them, underneath the ground, by hitting them that hard because they were going to try and do it to me. And as long as it was a clean hit, if they didn't get up, did you feel bad? Yeah, you don't want to see anybody hurt, but you say that's the sport. And that's the same thing in hockey. You lay a wicked hit on somebody. If it's a clean hit, as he said, though, we got away with one there. So that's the thing, how clean is it or when does it cross the line?
I was going to say, I think that's the whole nature of this conversation, though, is the fact that in Sam Bennett's case, he rabbit punched him from behind. It wasn't a clean hit by any stretch of the imagination. We had an angle that wasn't released by TNT for like 2 days before we finally got to digest that one in there. And oh, by the way, the fact that Marchand himself has not really been known as the cleanest player to ever lace him up either.
Right.
So that was the interesting part of this conversation for me, Dad and Claudia, was, yeah, I understand, Dad, exactly what you described. I mean, I was raised by you, and so it was flirting with the line and then some. I mean, hell, you played in an Eagles defense that separated how many shoulders of quarterbacks of opposing teams, and some of those felt a little bit intentional based on the way that guys were going at those, but I look at this, Claudia, and I go, well, yeah, it's one thing if you're laying them out normally. Hockey is an incredibly physical game, but this is also one with blurred lines because we let dudes fight out here. So when you see stuff like this, I hear everyone going, yeah, that's just hockey. And part of this last altercation didn't feel totally like hockey.
But because of what you said, if anybody else said it, maybe that's fine. Okay, that was a dirty hit. But Brad Marchand can't say that because everyone's going to say, all right, buddy, here's a highlight reel of dirty hits that you've taken. So yeah.
So I wonder, Mike, if hockey is the sport with the most blurred lines, right? With how fast the game is, how nonstop the game is. So you wonder of all the sports out there of what you can get away with. For those that want to get away with something, it seems like you can do it. Now, I don't know what happens after the fact, like the NFL. If the league watches tape after, and even if you didn't get called for something during the game, you can still get fined afterward. But during the game, it seems like that's a sport that the lines are can be blurred the most.
We just I think this last week or the week before had a conversation about how awesome it was that dude went out there and mixed it up with Buddy right before 1 minute, got his whole ass whooped in that last series for Boston. Like we allow and sanction and celebrate fighting in this sport. If we did that in the NBA, they would call the National Guard. There'd be a certain news station that would be losing their mind the next day, running wild with some of the worst headlines known to man. Like, yeah, we're having a two Americas moment this morning around the world of golf. This is the ultimate two Americas right here in the way that we talk about the blurred lines in hockey. There's no doubt. By the way, I do want to clean up.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, I wanted to clean up one point of parliamentary procedure here as our ice-cold shot that came from that Rangers series. And again, you can check out Jägermeister at www.draftkingsxjagermeister.com. That call that you heard on MSG Network with Sam Rosen and Dave Maloney. Wanted to give them the credit for the absolutely wonderful, emotional goal call there. There are a few things, Dad, like a home radio broadcast call for any sporting event there. Maybe if you get the Korean broadcast, those usually go pretty wild, but this one certainly lives up to the hype there as well. So congratulations to the Rangers moving on. Claudia, Best of luck to you and the Bruins. I hope it's not too stressful for you because, again, much like I want to remind people here, sports fandom is a sickness. We have all made a mistake doing this and giving our lives to these teams and letting them hurt us. That being said, we're here, and so we might as well continue to do it and do it big then. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. And we now have video footage of Scottie Scheffler arriving at Valhalla Country Club in Louisville, getting ready to get started with his round. We mentioned his tee time is supposed to be just after 10 o'clock Eastern, and there he is walking into the clubhouse, no longer orange jumpsuit clad, which is the last outfit we saw him rocking in his picture from JLo out there. And Dad, I can confirm also via a tweet from Nathan Hubbard, well-known Taylor Swift podcaster and brother of Mark Hubbard, who had a phenomenal day yesterday to start off his round and his weekend at the PGA Championship, said, can confirm Scottie has arrived, walked in, saluted player dining, and said good morning. So Scottie Scheffler apparently trying to walk in as if it's business as usual for a morning that's been anything but.
Yeah, you mentioned Mark Hubbard tied for second after the first round at 6 under. The highest placing player that's on the course now, he was tied for fifth from yesterday. It was Tom Kim. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Harris English, who was 4 under, tied for 12th, is on the course. As play is getting going right now. Again, we may see more delays with the rain. Scottie Scheffler is there, like we talked about. It'll be very interesting if we hear from him, and then what we hear from him. Not only what happened there, but at the precinct as well, where he was booked, put in that orange jumpsuit. You see the mugshot as well. That will be everywhere. Claudia, again, from the sports side of this, the secondary side of this, quite honestly, the sports side. What are the odds like now for Scottie Scheffler? I mean, he's a world number one. He finished day one at 4 under, where Schauffele was 9 under, who was winning this thing. So where has that changed from the opening round to now, where he is arrested? His caddy is leaving, won't be there on Saturday and Sunday. Have they dropped in this? Where's this at?
Yeah, so I watched the odds move in time, but I'll talk about the opening odds first. So Scheffler was the favorite. He opened at plus 450. McIlroy was second at plus 750. Schauffele was at 14-1. So, of course, you mentioned it, 9 under. He's had a great start. He's now the favorite. Schauffele is at plus 250. Scheffler was behind McIlroy. McIlroy was plus 450. Scheffler was 5-1. Now, this is not a massive move, but just within the release of him being released from jail, still strange headline, he's now tied with Rory McIlroy at plus 450. So either money came in or the odds makers moved that, knowing that some money was about to come in. But either way, 50 cents of movement in a market like this is pretty significant. So Scheffler looks like he's seen some money.
It is safe to say for some people out there, this might be the strangest way they have won or lost a bet ever going into a weekend of professional golf. So plenty to keep an eye on there. We'll wait, like we said, for any more sound, any more info or feedback that we get from any of the parties involved in what's been an incredibly strange morning at Valhalla Country Club, getting ready for all of this. Dad, we had news elsewhere in the world of sports yesterday that would have probably taken up a lot more of the show today, especially given my recent decision to jump back into this realm. But did you see we finally got the announcement from EA Sports? We're so back.
Yeah.
EA Sports College Football 2025 gets its long-awaited return. The announcement came yesterday that July 19th would be the day the Lord has made, so let us rejoice and be glad in it. We're getting the video game back here, Dad, and I can see Claudia rolling her eyes because Claudia, amongst other significant others, is probably going to lose the loved one in their life to this game for months on end once this thing comes out this summer.
I do understand the hype, though, right? There's been a hiatus since 2014. So like anything, when you're away from it for a while, you will be excited. I don't know if I'll play it because I'm seeing the price for the MVP bundle. And GoJo, this is directly at you because I'm sure you know. The pre-order for Madden 25 and College Football 25 together is $150. Is this how expensive video games are?
So, no, and this is kind of the convoluted part of the announcement from yesterday is they were making the announcement in conjunction with this bundle for the new Madden that you can try and get to buy also. So that package would get you the Madden game also and early access and some special stuff in there that, quite frankly, I have no interest in. We've waited this long for the game. I'm not going to get upcharged for 3 days of early access to go on this, he says now, and not in July. But I think for a lot of this, Dad, there's a lot of the fluff around it there. Most of the people excited about this game, like this is probably the most appealing a sports game has been to the average fan in quite some time. For people who have had time to go back and lionize what this used to be, like I was in college when this game was out. My enjoyment of then NCAA football was when I was a player, we would run and go see the person that was supposed to be us in this game. Obviously, the name, image, and likeness that became the subject of the lawsuit that eventually tanked the game. Now, these players, and again, for anyone that forgot, the players had to opt in to being having their name, image, and likeness used in this game. They were paid $600 and will receive a copy of the game in exchange for that. But now you're going to see the actual player, actual name in their hometowns, all the info and stuff in there, versus back then we would have teammates, black teammates of mine who would show up white in the game, and we'd have a lot of questions about what they were actually trying to pull off. But you're going to get this now. I didn't grow up playing it as much then because of sports then, so you've got people like me chomping at the bit to really dive at this for the first time, but also the people who grew up playing the dynasty mode, trying to take these group of 5 teams and make them national championships, because that's the real fun of this, Dad. That according to Matt Brown, who's our friend of the program, does a great job with the Extra Points newsletter, and has been nails covering the release saga of this video game, said the developers have made that the focus of the game. And so there's going to be stuff like Madden Ultimate that works its way into the game, but this is about the dynasty mode that everybody wants here. And that's why this summer just got locked up for so many people.
don't understand anything you just said, but that's okay. I understand how popular the game is. I get it. I mean, players would take this on the road and be playing it on the road. Now, it's been since 2014. It's been on hiatus since then. Was supposed to come back in early 2021. Then in December of 22, it was announced it would be released now, the summer of 2024. So on the cover is Travis Hunter from Colorado, Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers, and Michigan running back Donovan Edwards, to which I'll do the countdown of when Deion Sanders is asked why his son isn't on the cover. I'm sure Deion would have an interesting answer for that. He'll be happy for
there
Travis.
were already Colorado message board posters that were letting everybody know their displeasure with that. So you were right. That fire has been lit already, baby.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. But listen, over 10,000 players opted in. They'll get their $600. This is such a popular game. Again, I don't play it. I haven't played it. So all the dynasty modes you're talking about, I don't understand. But that doesn't mean I don't get the impact of this. This is huge, especially for something that's been popular, though has some glitches in it, like you mentioned. And it's been 8 years since you've had the chance to play it. So this is going to be an unbelievably hot game, not just by the regular fans out there, but by the players themselves, because everybody wants to see what they look like, right? Even when you guys were on this thing and looking at it, how do you look? How are you portrayed? Everyone will be complaining about their whatever their ranking is as well, just like we see in the Madden for the NFL. So it's going to be huge. This has been a hit for years and years and years between obviously Madden, especially Madden for the NFL. So I get the impact of this. And with that long of a hiatus, there are people chomping at the bit to get back into this.
Distance made the heart grow fonder, baby. It is. It's going to be electric. You mentioned it is interesting if you want to psychoanalyze the cover a little bit. The lack of star power in college football going into this season, pretty staggering after what we had last year, if that's the group of athletes that are on the cover of this compared to the group, especially quarterback-led, that we had this past season. But that being said, if you are in the game and you are in dynasty mode playing with one of these teams, people are going to have very little respect for you. Again, if you're not diving into the group of five and trying to make the Akron Zips a national champion, you really are afraid of the grind.
Can you explain to me in 30 seconds what dynasty mode is?
Dynasty mode is where you pick one team and you become the coach of that team and you try and have them win a national championship. Ultimate is where you basically build a fantasy team. You buy packs of players kind of like you would do for a card game and do it that way. For dynasty mode, you pick a team. I could go out there tomorrow and I could become Marcus Freeman and I could go try my hand at recruiting. You're going to have elements of NIL, the transfer portal and all this. And I have a feeling a lot more people tending to skew on the side of management in the way that we don't talk about publicly here. You're going to see teams probably running players off of teams, hawking guys in the portal, and doing all sorts of depraved stuff we would never endorse in real life, because now it's about wins and losses, baby.
motivation for the Knicks in the locker room in this Game 6 against the Pacers, according to the Dan Le Batard Show.
Get us a little closer to the truth, Fred. I'm wasting a lot of money and time investigating your big story.
And graphics.
All right, here's what I'll tell you, Dan. As a reporter, and you know this, you go in the locker room and there is a certain element
Smell.
of that's true as well. Honestly, there was none. It was very loud. When it happened, it strung along for, I would say, a lot longer than one might expect for a fart of that volume and in that context. It actually didn't get a reaction audibly at all. It got pure silence and a look over to that one player, and that one player looked around as if he was being inconspicuous and said with a completely straight face, "Something's up with the pipes in here."
Men are so simple.
So this fart apparently came in pregame before Game 5 and helped not only lighten the body of whoever released that fart, but also lighten the mood in the room there. And it is, Dad, a testament to the fact that farts are undefeated in making people laugh. No matter how old you are, no matter the circumstances here, a good fart can cut through almost any situation. And it sounds like, based on this reporting, did not smell, which makes it the perfect fart for this moment. Because if it smells all of a sudden on the backside there, it makes things a little bit uncomfortable.
If you had your mother as a guest right now on this show, she would confirm that there's a lot of laughter by children like myself when that happens. You are right, Claudia. Men are simple. We are very simple. And when you're in a locker room, let me tell you what, you have no problem just letting it go and try and make it sound as great as you possibly can. That's basically what a locker room's for. It's a bunch of 12-year-olds hanging out doing their thing. But the one thing that surprises me is, my God, to look around and say that was the pipes. That's when you take ownership, man. You say, hell yeah, that was me. You know, I mean, that's the place to let it go. So what an incredible sports story we're talking about here.
So this is my question, is based off what we know from the outside here, which Knicks player do you think most likely farted? I think I heard in the report. So that was, I believe that report there came from Fred Katz over at The Athletic, who covers the Knicks for their beat there. But I had heard the Le Batard Show did some reporting with some other Knicks beat reporters that said it might have been a rotation player that let this one rip. So based on that, let's say of the starters, there's no way it was Dante DiVincenzo. He does not. He seems like a guy that very carefully guards his farts. Jalen Brunson, it's probably not coming from your star player. Star player's too locked in to let it rip like that. This feels like Isaiah Hartenstein territory if I had to pick a starter, if I had to do that. I don't know, Claudia, if you feel differently or not.
I was going to say, I don't know, Brunson dropped 44 points. Maybe he was feeling a little bit lighter. If they said it was that long of a, I don't know. What about you, Senior?
I haven't really thought about that, of which person it would be. I'm not going to lie. And okay, Hartenstein, great. All right, whatever. All I know is it happened, and I would have laughed hysterically.
I was going to say, I mean, well, the length of the fart they're describing reminds me of the scene in Step Brothers where they're doing the job interview and John C. Reilly lets the fart rip in the small room where Seth Rogen's interviewing them for the janitor job while they're in tuxedos. That's exactly what I'm picturing here. And for a rotation player, it's not like the Knicks have that many bench players in here. I mean, did Alec Burks come in and cement his postseason legacy by not only actually producing on the court, but also producing a fart off the court that bonded the boys together? This is sports magic right now. We've got a lot of that going around here. The incredible leadership we talked about with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards. But you talk about the fart heard around the world. If that propels the Knicks to an Eastern Conference Finals appearance here, there can't be enough reporting on this. Nicole Auerbach over at The Athletic tends to do a great job on the stranger side of sports pieces. It's been a while since we've gotten one from her. The New York Knicks fart seems like the perfect place, even though it's professional basketball and not college football, for Nicole to reinsert and embed in the situation.
Anything to lighten the load, right?
Or the mood, baby. Or the mood here. Claudia, that being said, let's get to the actual game itself because, oh, by the way, the Knicks now managed to get to a situation where we've got Game 6 here with a lot on the line. So let's get to cash it or trash it.
Yeah, thanks to that fart, a 121-91 win in Game 5, which does lead us to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear everything that DraftKings has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Game 6, Pacers open the 5.5-point favorite, now up to 6 pretty much across the board. So, Senior, cashing or trashing a Pacers cover that will send this series back to New York for Game 7?
I don't know. I think the Pacers win. We'll see about a cover. For the Knicks, it was their first of their 7 playoff wins that wasn't within 3 points in the last 5 minutes. We've seen them play close, hard, physical games. But I am going to go with the Pacers here. And you know what? I'm going to say it covers because I think they'll get that lead, and then not the lead of the, Denver and Minnesota game, but there'll come a point where you get enough of a lead and you say, okay, let's regroup it for Game 7, which will be back in New York. So I'll go with the Pacers with the win, and I'll go with the cover as well, and then Game 7 back in New York.
Yeah, you look at the Pacers' 2 wins, obviously the second one more of a blowout. I question at this point in the series, based on just how honestly refreshed the Knicks look. That was a team that when you go back to Game 4, when they had gotten just blown off the court in Indianapolis, how that game looked, how tired that team looked versus the team that showed up back rejuvenated in Game 5. I think the Knicks have a little more pep in their step, but I'm with you, Dad. I think Indiana forces Game 7, and I think they're going to have to do it by covering the number, because if it's close, I just don't trust them at this juncture with how this Knicks team looks to go out there and be able to win a close game with the way that Jalen Brunson's been playing superhero basketball on the other side of the court over there. And the fact that the foot injury now seems like a distant memory after this last game, all the above. Like, I don't know, Dad. It was amazing seeing that team. I don't know about you. We've talked over and over again about their conditioning in this series, the fact that Josh Hart has been such a monster on the offensive glass, the fact that Alec Burks is not just being accused of farting before that Game 5, but also someone that's now playing meaningful minutes for the New York Knicks in a postseason where it seemed like that had gone by the wayside, but injuries forced their hands. I never thought that I thought they could win Game 5. I did not think it would look the way it did. That now makes me question my pick of Indiana winning this series in 7.
So you wonder, because a lot of shade was getting thrown Tom Thibodeau's way, right? When guys were getting hurt, guys were looking tired because rotation got shorter, that he works these guys too hard. And if you play for him, he is a stickler on defense, and he is going to work you guys. That's just the way it goes. I'm wondering if the people that have been criticizing him will give him credit if New York moves on from this series to say that other guys in the rotation who have had to step up have stepped up, that somehow they've been rejuvenated. I don't know if they had a team IV or not to try and refresh them, but I wonder if Thibodeau, if this team goes on to the Eastern Conference Finals, will get some praise for how well he's prepared his team to get this far.
You know what? I'm not sure, Dad, because, it's not like this is early in Tibbs' career, right? Like, we've seen him grind other players into dust. We've seen this have diminished returns at certain points in the postseason, and it's not to say he deserves blame for all the injuries that have popped up. I saw Monica McNutt kind of warring against that idea, and I think there's some merit to the fact that maybe we go too far with that at times, but I think if you're assigning and lining up people who are going to get credit, it's going to firmly fall on Jalen Brunson for being just the perfect weapon for this coach, right? Sometimes, Dad, for a coach, we talk about this all the time where a player finds the coach that unlocks them. Patrick Mahomes would have been great anywhere, but he lands with Andy Reid, and that combination of player and coach and what he allows him to do unlocks a level we would have seen. Sometimes that works the same way for a coach, where they finally find the player that's the perfect vessel and willing to meet the message the coach has been preaching and be the one to enact that in the locker room. Because the message is only going to go as far as your star player takes it, and he's found the perfect star in Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, he has. So a big one for Jalen. If not, I do think it goes back to New York, and boy, will Madison Square Garden be going absolutely bonkers on a Game 7 if they hit that.
The good thing is we already know in the pregame huddle for the New York Knicks, the rallying cry is going to be, fellas, let it rip. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send everybody into their weekend. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Xumo Play, all these great places, including right here on the DraftKings YouTube. Thank you to our great guests, David Ortiz, Boston Red Sox all-time great baseball Hall of Famer, for joining us here to chop it up some of this morning. If you missed that, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, wherever you hear that on the radio, or wherever you get your podcast, and of course right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Guys, let's get started off with this. Interesting thought yesterday that came from an interview Dabo Swinney did on SiriusXM College Radio. Sat down with my buddy Roddy Jones, talking about his use of the transfer portal. It has been the topic of conversation for Clemson for quite some time now, and Dabo Swinney, famously, I think the only team in FBS football that has not taken a transfer from the portal during this cycle. Do we have the sound of Dabo yesterday on SXM College Radio to play? We don't. Okay, we just have the headline and we've got the tweet right here where Dabo Swinney went on to basically say there are 3 types of players in the portal. Most of the guys in the portal, he said the first kind aren't good enough to play at Clemson. He said the second kind are guys that already know where they're going when they enter into the portal, so we, quote, never have a chance with them. And he said the third was guys entering the portal just to see what they can get, and said we're not going to compete with that either. And Dad, a lot of people hung on to the first headline of this, which was most of the guys in the portal aren't good enough to play for us. That was the banner for the tweets, and I get it. That's good for engagement, and it's true. Like, he's not wrong in there, even if it sounds a little bit condescending. He's not wrong there. Most of the people in the portal aren't good enough to play at Clemson, even a team this year that might not be as good as the ones in the past. But the other 2 examples he mentioned, those are choices that Dabo made. You could say, yeah, it's tampering and it's not legal, but baby, that's the game right now, and everybody else seems to be playing it, including a lot of the teams that have been your peers at the top of college football. And then the last one basically indicates Dabo is going to not continue to play the game. If it's having to go out here and pay for high-priced players in the portal, that is not something he's been comfortable with. And Dad, the thing I'll say is he's at least been consistent on this front for the entirety of this change in college football.
Well, we've heard Matt Rule say that in Nebraska as well. He said if there's a bidding war on a quarterback, he said, million, $1.5 or whatever, said he's not coming to Nebraska. We're not getting him. So there are coaches that feel that way. I disagree with you a bit on the first part of it. I do think there are players in the portal that could start for Clemson. Remember, it's not all starters aren't staying. They have starters that leave.
He said most.
Most.
He said most of them in the portal, which is right.
Right, yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see. I mean, he was 9-4 last year. Proof will be in the pudding. He is trying to go this route that says, doesn't seem like they're paying a lot. They're bidding on anybody or paying a lot of money out there, and they're not taking portal guys. So if that's where you want to stand, that's fine. He's the coach. It's his choice. Again, he was 4-4 in the conference, 9-4 overall, a team that we've seen used to being near the top. So let's see. Like I said, the proof will be there. What kind of team can he build through just recruiting and not bringing in NIL guys or portal guys for the most part? I tend to think it's not going to work out for him, but it's his choice. He's trying to play it this way, basically the old school way or the way it was before all this changed. And we can all have all the opinions we want, but it's going to be very easy to see if it works or not by their record and how they're doing.
Oh, Dad, I want to be abundantly clear. I agree with you. I think going this route is a mistake if your goal is to stay at the top of the sport where Clemson's been, and that's the difference. Their standard was we were one of the premier teams. It was Clemson and Alabama that defined essentially the first decade of the college football playoff, with Georgia really hammering out the ending there. And this doesn't seem like a way to stay competitive with that group going forward. I get there's a bunch of different strategies. We're seeing Colorado do one extreme, but we're seeing Clemson do the other extreme. But Dabo Swinney, who once famously said, if we're going to start paying players and make this like the NFL, I'll go do something else, hasn't gone and done something else, but has made it very clear he's not changing for nothing or nobody, as the world of college sports does, and reinforced that again yesterday. Claudia, let's get to that now. Speaking of something people disagree on, maybe the ugliest uniforms in NFL history dropped yesterday.
Are people disagreeing with that? Because I feel like that's pretty consensus. I think it's universal that everybody loves a throwback. It's always exciting. But the Giants went and did this. They're called the Century Red Unis. They're going to wear it up to 2 times this season. They're 100th season in the NFL. The issue is they're god awful. And I get it. It's an ode to what they used to wear, the tan pants specifically they wore in their very first year of existence. But they're nasty. And the top, just everything about it. I don't know how you fix it, Senior. How do you fix this?
I'm one of those that will completely disagree with you guys. I love any type of throwback they try because it's not for good. It's, you know what? People used to rip the Notre Dame when they do the Shamrock series and they change it. People would rip it. It's a one-time thing. This is a 2-time thing. It would take a lot for me to say, oh my God, I wouldn't want to put that on or see that. I love when they do it. I love it. So I have no problem with these uniforms at all. I am a big fan of mixing it up out there. And I'm not talking like Oregon, where they have all this in their arsenal and they keep doing the different things. This is going to be 2 times, and that's it. I have zero problem with it.
Well, Dad, I have no problem with the idea of changing it up and doing a throwback. I'm just saying these particular jerseys are not good. They are aesthetically bad. The tops look like the Montreal Canadiens jersey reimagined in some horror house. The bottom of these horror, Horror, just to be clear.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were going to say that.
House of Horrors. I'm making that very abundantly clear for everyone listening now. And the bottoms, Dad, those are going to be the nude pants. We've seen other teams try and pull these off where you go out there and for a certain section of your team that's pigmentally challenged, you're going to look like you're butt naked out there out in the field.
I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to talk me out of it. I have no problem with them at all. Enjoy them, playing them. People are going to hate on them. I have no problem with them. I actually like them.
Not going to make any commentary about my father's fashion choices, but I'm just saying, if that's your ally in this, might tell you what you need to know. The Montreal Canadiens, by the way, had some funny with this, the Spider-Man pointing meme that they put out on their Twitter account to sort of troll the fact that these absolutely, the more I see it now, it's a little thicker where the numbers are for obvious reasons where you'd instead have the C in the Montreal jerseys, but it is very, very similar. And honestly, you know what? If they had gone with those colored pants, if they had gone blue and red, it might have saved this some. It's the fact that you've got one, the Michigan-style winged helmets, which I'm never going to be a fan of for obvious reasons, but then the bottom being tan really throws me.
It's the pants.
All right, your mother just texted us both, said she likes the unis. Go ahead and yell at her, Mike. Go ahead and yell at your mother.
Wow.
Go on, do it.
Maybe they'll grow on
I think my mom's wrong. I think my mom's wrong. I don't know what you want to tell me. I think my mom's wrong. I think you guys both like ugly jerseys in this case, and I feel badly for you guys. But that's okay. That's your choice, and you're allowed to do that. And we're going to move on to the third now, Claudia, because true love is dead yet again, and we've got to mourn this loss right now.
Breaking news. Nobody saw this coming. JLo, Ben Affleck broke up again. What? You're kidding. What? Ben Affleck apparently staying at home, seems to be occupying without Jennifer Lopez. They were not seen at some of the big events like the Met Gala, blah, blah, but he was at the Tom Brady roast. So he said he was too busy to go to the Met Gala with JLo, yet he went to the Tom Brady roast. Seemed to have a lot of energy there. Least surprising thing. I literally said to my mom 2 days ago, I just can't wait for the headline because you know it's coming.
I, for one, am shocked. Just shocked that these two crazy kids couldn't get it done the second time around. Oh my God, there is no hope for love anywhere in the world. God, this is ridiculous.
GoJo.
I mean, Dad, this is right up your alley. No one loves those magazines by the rack at the grocery store checkout more than you. So if anyone's been dialed in on this scene doing the legwork, it is my father who has made his living with those mags at the checkout. I will say, if she saw his set at Tom Brady's roast and decided she had had enough, there's not a lot of people that could blame her because it was really bad. It was by far the worst part of the night. And, I for one hope they work it out. We don't have anything confirmed here yet. I still want to believe in these guys. And so I'm going to sit here and root that they managed to work it out here. They made such a wonderful Dunkin' commercial for the Super Bowl. That kind of unity and chemistry shouldn't be lost. Speaking of chemistry, if you enjoy ours, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Go Irish. Beat Hoyas.